Okay, next up we have the final project of our graduating student, Jeff Thompson, CheckMate.
They're sick of hearing this, actually.
Oh, this project again.
But we aren't, Jeff.
Right.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Jeff, and I'm really excited to be giving my final thesis presentation today and talking to you guys about CheckMate. CheckMate starts off in restaurants. Now, restaurants are really a quintessential part of human culture. For thousands of years across all cultures, people have been breaking bread and sharing drinks together, and restaurants strive to create an experience that allows you to escape from the world. And they spend a lot of time focusing on creating unique experiences and really trying to foster this sense of being with your friends, being with your family, and getting away from everything. About 4 years ago, I was doing just that. I was in college, out to dinner with some of my friends, trying to escape schoolwork and studying. And at the end of this meal, as at the end of every meal, the final item comes to your table. No matter how good or how bad the experience is, it's always the same item. It's a bill. And it's kind of cold. It's the end of the experience. It's the end of this break from reality. It's, here's the money you owe, you guys figure out how you have to pay it. And anyone who's eaten out in a group knows how much of a pain that can be. The anxiety of, am I going to get screwed because I showed up late, feeling like you overpaid or underpaid. And as we're sitting there arguing with 10 cards on the table, I thought, why isn't there something easier than this? With all technology systems out there today, my phone in my pocket, my iPad on my couch, why can't we use some type of technology to facilitate this bill payment so I don't have to think about it, so I don't get pulled out of this experience? And that simple idea is what birthed CheckMate and essentially changed my life. Before I talk about the product, though, I'm going to talk about how I'm going to frame this presentation. There are 5 questions that people ask quite frequently in all different types of design and school in general. Who, what, when, where, and how. These questions facilitate you to think about things in specific ways. You know, who are we serving? Well, people in restaurants. What are they doing? They're using some type of device or some service that's going to allow them to split their bill. The final question that you guys probably realize is missing is actually probably the most interesting one. It seems easy at first to answer. Why are we doing this? Because bill payment sucks. But the thing is, I found through the course of this project that getting that question right is the most critical and probably the most challenging thing to do. So today I'm going to tell you about 3 decisions that I made during the course of this project that involved these 6 questions and how those decisions drove the project to where it is right now, which is more than just a project, more than just a simple device. It's actually a company that I started with a couple people. So let's talk about the device. That was kind of the first idea that we had, was build this tablet, some type of little device, something maybe that looks like this, that I can just tap the items that I got. So we said, okay, we know what we want to build. So we put together a tablet using a stock Android Chinese tablet, really cheap. We ripped it apart, and then I designed a custom enclosure for it that we got built in small run tooling manufacturing. So it was silicone mold with urethane plastic, and we repackaged it together, put it into this shell with a card reader so you can swipe a card and actually execute a transaction. And this was great. This was a fantastic prototype that allowed us to basically build a looks like prototype. But then we started to ask ourselves, well, what would be the next step here? How would we turn this into a real product? Because I can't make hundreds of these. It was so much labor, and we can't just be ripping apart tablets and reselling them. So what do we want the full production tablet to look like? Well, obviously we want it to be this absolutely gorgeous, sexy device that's custom made, that's waterproof, that's rugged, that has all the features that we want. And the only way we saw we could deliver this vision is building our own custom tablet. Because we're engineers and we like designing things. And so we rocketed down this path and we built a request for proposal and we submitted it to some design firms. And the feedback we got was pretty striking. Oh, that's going to cost about $200,000 to design. And it's going to be about 9 months until you see anything coming off factory lines. Oh, and by the way, who are you going to be using for your supply? Who's going to be doing the QA on this? What does your assembly process need to look like? Where's your storage facilities? How are you going to be managing the supply? Oh man, that seemed like a lot of work. So that sixth question had to get brought up. Why are we building our own custom tablet? Well, because we want to facilitate an interaction. We want people to be able to tap their items. But that's actually software. So if we just need a window for software, why are we spending all this money and time building a hardware solution? It just didn't work out. And the business side of it came into it and said, that's just not a really good decision. Essentially what we had on our hands was a prototype on one end of the spectrum and a full-scale tablet on the other. What we needed to do was we needed to build CheckMate. And that's what we did. We stepped back and we said, what can we do to actually give the device the right type of features without us having to put in all the work? So what we did was we took a Nexus 7 tablet, something that we can buy off the shelf, and we designed a custom enclosure for it, basically a case that has a little bit of electronics. All those things are in our scope of being able to do ourselves. We don't have to contract outside design firms. And the other nice thing about this from a business perspective is now we know how to do the management of all this, because the shells and a little bit of electronics are easy to get made in low quantities. We can get them done locally and then just have those in some boxes. And then when we need to sell more tablets, we just buy them from Google, have them shipped to us, and put them together. So it was only through making some mistakes, asking the right questions, that we're finally able to come to the solution that we think really makes sense, not just from a business perspective, but also from an engineering and design perspective. So as I've been saying, the hardware is really just a portal for the software. And that was the next thing that we tackled after we got this prototype built. So we're engineers, we sat down and we built this really complicated flow chart. And what we realized through building this was this is a linear experience, which is interesting. It's different than most devices that you interact with in that you are only going to use this in a restaurant. You're probably not going to have seen it many times before you use it first, but you need to be able to use it correctly. So we need to be very careful about what paths we let you go down and making sure you don't get stuck in things. So we took this flow chart and we designed an interface. We mocked it up in cardboard so we could move it around on the table and start to play with things. And that was a really great step in getting us to this first version of the software. Once we had that software built, people started asking us, Sarah and Peter, well, when are you going to put this in front of people? That was an interesting decision because we didn't feel like we were necessarily quite ready. The software wasn't exactly at this point. We understood the 5 questions. We're going to do it in Tap House. We'll do it with people who are in our age range, 18 to 35. We'll set the situation up like this. We knew how the technical side was going to work out. But it wasn't until we actually did the testing and put this in people's hands that we understood why we had done it. We learned so much more than I imagined we would. And it was on things like, the graphics need to be cleaned up, or we probably need a tutorial mode for this. Oh, there are some database issues that we didn't even see because we just can't poke the system the way that people who don't know what they're doing are going to poke it. The other interesting thing that this yielded was being able to relax a little bit about having your product in people's hands. And that's something that in school you don't get an opportunity to do quite often, is actually releasing what you've done in a vacuum to people who don't know about it. And being able to be calm and comfortable with that, and over the course of iterating through and doing multiple testing sessions, has been invaluable experience. So that decision to do that testing, though it felt a little bit premature, really I don't think was. The final thing that this testing and the building of the prototype created was a situation where we're sitting in this restaurant and the owner says, hey, this seems really great. What are you guys going to do with this? And someone actually looked at us and said, if you guys are doing this for real, I'd be willing to invest. So that was really the third big decision that we had to make. How far are we going to try and take this? We had this idea for a product with maybe some greater features in our head, but we hadn't done all the work to actually get this to a point where we felt we could launch it into a company. But we sat down and we said, yeah, let's do it. We'll form an LLC and we're going to go at this. So we got some good advisors and we started talking to them, and we were prepared with answers to those 6 questions about the technical stuff. Well, how's the database exchanging information? How are we gonna build the tablets? What's our strategy for facilitating this interaction? But that's not really what people asked us. They said, well, what's your target segment? What's your go-to-market strategy? Where is the business plan? What's the terms of the investment look like? How long until I see a return on that investment? Who else is investing? And why would restaurants want to buy this? Okay, well, now we had to step back again, and we had to really think about this on a holistic level as a business. So we built a business plan. We segmented the market out and started thinking about barriers to entry. We figured out what our management team would look like. We developed some pricing. We did positioning and saw how the financing would work out through different revenue models. We came up with an expansion strategy, which obviously we're still working on, and we started looking at our competition to figure out how we would fit. And what we came out with was, a much more solid understanding of how we would go out looking for money, how we would develop this business, but also on an engineering and design level, what the system really looked like. So we've got CheckMate, kind of the anchor, the starting point, and it's more than just a consumer tablet now. It can do the bill payment, but it can also give real information back to the servers. What's their tips for the night? Give the managers information about how things are doing on the floor. Then we are going to build a portal, really simple, that can give them notifications and real-time updates about what's happening in their restaurant and access to information that right now they just don't have at their fingertips. And the final thing that we're really excited about is we're building a user-side app to link all this information together. And essentially what that does is it allows you to see, because you've been telling the device what you order, all the food that you get. And now you can get better suggestions. The restaurants can reach out on a one-to-one level. And the really powerful thing that we can do, because we developed this at this time and not 25 years ago with the other POS systems, we can link this up through the cloud so it's incredibly easy to scale and easy to build. So with this business strategy in our hands, we went out and we raised $250,000 in financing. And now we have an opportunity to actually make this real. The interesting thing is, now that we've gotten this opportunity, these questions just keep coming up in different ways and different shapes. And that's what's really exciting. So I guess really the last thing that I want to tell you guys about is, well, why? Why do I wake up, oh, sorry, this is a slide I didn't expect to see. Just to reiterate. Prototype to production, that was the first decision. Then we iterated through this testing, and then we built a company from a product. But again, really, what is the driving factor? Why do I wake up every morning and want to do this? Well, it's because we saw an opportunity in an interaction that we thought was broken, and then we realized how much more powerful that could be. We're doing this because I believe that technology in the right place with the right intention can create efficiency, increase people's happiness, and really create an incredibly valuable company both internally and externally. We're doing this because we honestly believe that this company can be much more than just a tablet in restaurants. It can be bigger than anything out there right now. We're doing this because we want to change the world. So that's kind of the high-level concept, and you guys have heard me talk about this device. So the last thing that I want to show you before we end the presentation is a little teaser video that we made that just showcases the device. Thanks.
tried it, but it's really awesome to see it like at this point. It's great. Awesome job.
Thanks.
One kind of technical but maybe more important thing is the swipe necessary? I've seen a lot of apps that, or recently some apps that are able to take an image of a card and then process based on that. And so you could have some cases where the restaurant doesn't want to buy the tablets, but you could still allow them to use the system just on regular phones.
Yeah, it's definitely something we could do. I mean, if you're using a phone, we can just store the credit card in it anyway.
Sure.
We wouldn't even have to take a picture of it. But yeah, it's a great point. And there's versions of the model where a restaurant could potentially use the system without the tablets if they really
Nice.
didn't want to.
How do you sell it to the restaurant? What's the benefit for them to have it? Because the user is actually not the buyer.
Yeah, well, so in a sense, yeah, the way that the device works from the user perspective, there's obviously value there. But from the restaurant, like I kind of mentioned, there's this ability to get real-time information. You can see that you can rate items really easily, rate your server. That type of feedback restaurants actually do want all the time. They're just not able to get it, and they're not able to get it in real time. We also have plans to, through these user profiles that we generate in this app, restaurants can actually see who their good customers are, start to tailor their experiences better, play with their menu and see what's selling well, what isn't selling well, what's being rated well, and what isn't. So there's things to be gained on both an operations side, because it's more efficient for the servers on some level, and also on the patron-facing side. John?
I know you guys did at least one test dinner, Tap House. What's your, I guess, time frame moving forward? Are you expecting to have this in restaurants within a year, or is that something you don't know?
Yeah, so our target at this point is by the end of January, we'll be full running at Tap House. And then there's a couple other restaurants that we're going to be working with to do pilots in the next couple of months.
Jeff, two questions.
Yeah.
How far back into the restaurant system do you have to go to tie in?
Mhm.
And what does that interface look like? Is that standard interface, or is that, do you have to get in bed with the people who do all the other data stuff? And then the other question is whether they're, so you said there's maybe a strategy where you use the user's phone, and there's a strategy where you have an integrated hardware solution, quasi-integrated hardware solution. What about a more modular, a square or something, a modular swipe interface? So it's totally standard hardware.
Yeah. So the first question's pretty simple to answer, although it's a complicated situation, unfortunately. So the big POS companies, there's basically two big ones. They do offer integration services like APIs, and a lot of the smaller ones do too. So essentially, we get in bed with them. We just like leech on top of their system, and we can push and pull information. It's nice because we don't actually have to do any credit card processing or handle any of the real details of the interaction. The servers just still enter bills the same way through those terminals, and the devices just pull that information and can push payment data back through them. In terms of the models and what we could do with a dongle or this and that, there's a lot of different ways we can go with it. We're trying to avoid the dongle thing, and essentially the case, the shell for the Nexus is a dongle. It's just a little bit more robust. One of the nice benefits of that is it also increases the durability of the device. But in the future, we imagine that, and we are going to be alpha beta testing essentially to see if can an app accomplish this in a way that allows us to expand quickly. But we do think the devices are going to be very powerful, not just from a user perspective, but from servers being able to use them for mobile ordering and looking up past customer trends and things like that. So I think there's a lot of benefits to the hardware, but we can potentially lead into the market with something that's a little bit simpler.
How do you charge the device? Because I imagine you're going to have like 30, 40 in a restaurant. Like, are you going to have like 30, 40 cords that plug into 30, 40 outlets?
So there's two pads on the back of the device. It's just a drop-in charging system, which is actually pretty nice because you don't have to be fumbling with cords or anything like that. And yeah, we hope to not have 30 to 40 in restaurants, maybe like 20 to 25 in a huge restaurant. Because the nice thing about these is they don't have to live on every table, right? Because it's only coming at the end of the build process. You don't need one for every single table in the restaurant.
Could you give it to them in line, or, they're, like, if you go to a fancy restaurant with a big wait, right, they're gonna hand you a pager or some kind of device, so you can give them that choices, they feel ready.
That's interesting, idea.
It would
Yeah.
buzz when they're ready,
Buzz,
when
yeah.
they're ready.
Right. Or they could swipe to log themselves in, and they would have all their phone number, and they could just walk away, and that's how you could do your reservations. So you guys kind of see, like, the power of this system is that the software can do almost anything, right? Once we figure out the best channels to get into the restaurants and start delivering some of this value, we can test little things like that in different restaurants, and little ideas can get built out fairly quickly because we're building this on a cloud-based platform, and it's Android, so pushing down new apps to it is very simple, much simpler than if we had built the system on like a Linux-based system and they were installed hardwired into every restaurant we were in. That's why we're gonna beat all the POS companies that are out there right now.
Glad you don't sell too much.
No lack of confidence. I'll go first this time. So I liked your presentation, the video was great. I thought it was nice storytelling too about the decision points. I have one tiny critique, which is with your logo. You only have one part of the star highlighted, so it's like a 1-star business. I think it should at least be a 4-star business.
Actually, I see 4 stars highlighted.
Thanks, Rob. No, it's a great one. We need a better logo designer. I've been doing it, and yeah.
Do you have that domain?
No.
Yeah.
There are
Almost
designers,
impossible.
there are
Yeah.
designers
There's
that can do
no
that kind of thing.
nowadays.
Yeah, you can hire someone for that for much less than $100,000. No, I think you did a great job. It's been a pleasure watching the evolution of this idea since we first started to talk about it a long, long time ago. And I think it's really interesting to see how the conversation changes when something gets real. And I think you learned a lot through the class and through school, but as soon as there's like money on the table and it's other people's money, the decisions get much more serious, and you start. I think it's great that we've been able to kind of be a part of it, because you really start to see, how does this influence this, and how do you really get serious about who you are and who you're not, and leave enough flexibility to evolve as you learn more about the market, but aren't, changing your entire strategy every 5 minutes.
Right.
So I think you've done a really nice job of that in particular, and I really appreciated being part of it.
Thanks.
I guess a lot of what's been fun for me is the number of experiences I've had with entrepreneurs, and the ones that I think tend to be more successful are the ones that are in fact rather maniacal. Which I certainly find you in the category of.
Thanks, Peter.
No, that was a compliment. Because if you're not, if you don't wake up dreaming it, or dream it and wake up doing it, the likelihood of it actually ever happening is a lot less. And I think as Sarah was saying, what was very exciting to watch was your force of personality and drive to pursue this thing hit some really good, solid barriers that you had to divert your direction with, or as a result of. And watching you realize that you had to divert your direction and deal with the change, and see what you had to learn in order to deal with the change, for me was a great experience, and I'm thrilled to have been part of it.
Thanks.
Sure. In terms of presentation, really liked the fact that you started off and connected it to you, because I think that's one of the important things about CheckMate is it really is a big part of you, and vice versa. And I think that personality, the personal story at the beginning, I think really kind of drives that home, and it doesn't just make it this big entity behind the wall somewhere. I think it really is important, not only for people to know about it, but your investors to know that you're kind of committed to it. So I think it's a really effective way of doing that at the beginning of the presentation, kind of setting context. So that was great. I think one of the things that has continually impressed me about you is the way that you've kind of gone about this is that you realized really early on that it's okay to ask a lot of questions. You weren't afraid of doing that. And having something that was tangible at the beginning, you know, your first instincts of like building it and making it real, trying to go from there, I think is what led you down a platform and an approach that actually does give you a little bit of a competitive advantage in terms of the marketplace that's out there. So I think those are the two powerful things, you know, and don't lose those things, because I think it is going to be important for your future and your growth here. So it's good.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Nice job.